We're both graduating from the Electrical and Computer Engineering department at George Mason University this coming May. We're here, we're just going to test out our device that we use that uses sound frequencies to extinguish flames.
I see this device being applied to a lot of things. First off, I think in the kitchen, it could be on top of a stovetop. But eventually, I'd like to see this applied to maybe swarm robotics, where it'd be attached to a drone, and that would be applied to forest fires or even building fires, where you wouldn't want to sacrifice human life.
Professor Brian Mark really stepped in to help us.
He just gave us a lot of support.
I think as a whole, engineering is really just finding solutions finding simple solutions to complicated problems. Engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible, so that's what we did.
Anti-gravity experiment number 1. We have a guitar, and we have an amplifier, and we have a rock sitting on a scale. I put some windings of wire around it, just regular old baling wire. I might even try a piece of iron and a piece of rock. I'm thinking maybe the iron or the scale is reacting to the vibration rather than the rock. So what we're going to do is put a small piece of rock, a small piece of metal on this gram scale in order to maybe figure that one out. But this is what we have so far.
Mysteries of sound. So, what we have is the effect of sound on everything around us, from the water we drink, to the air that we breathe, to the controls put on us by our governments. Sonic waves are definitely a wave of unprecedented uses, from the pain of the control of our masters to everyday communication, music of the soul. There's so many uses for sound that we're only beginning to understand what its ramifications are and what its uses were in the past. The military applications of sound and the receiving of sound have been foremost in military uses since the beginning of time. The levitation of items and people and objects and huge stones is noted throughout history, and not just in one culture, but in many, many cultures. The shapes of sound cover all the sacred geometry shapes. It covers that and so much more. Sound can take the shapes of many things, and some believe that sound can be used to create, as in from the Word of God. Many believe that refers to a tone or collection of tones that was used to create what we are today. From that creation came ourselves. Alright, so sound, we know it's very versatile. It can be used for a lot of different things, from calling your dog to boiling your water. Here's an object that a guy overseas developed. He admitted he didn't even know why it worked. All he knew is that when he put power to it, it boiled water. What he was really doing is reaching the sonic resonance of water and thereby releasing the oxygen within the water. This created friction, heated up the atoms, molecules, and hot boiled water. I'm going to show you a bunch of graphs that you may or may not understand, so I'm not going to really explain them. I'm just going to put them up there, and those of you that do understand it can go through the technical stuff. Here's another one that shows the basics of levitation and how it would relate. I have a lot of these charts. I've done a lot of research on this. I totally believe, and by the end of this I'm sure you'll believe as well, that sound is the key to our monolithic problem. From the shapes that our ancestors used to create their dwellings, to the piezoelectric water speakers of India. I'm going to show you all that and so much more in this Ancient Alien Update number 15, Frequencies and Resonance. Okay, so we know that sound can be used to control crowds because it makes it uncomfortable, but the true beauty of sound is the pressures that it creates. And when sound creates a pressure, it creates movement, and that's both on the molecular level and on the ethereal level, which means that technically you could psychically create a frequency that would push someone away without there actually being a physical force. So, being a musician, as you know I am, I work on sonic waves all the time. And some songs can bring tears to someone's eyes. And not just because the song sucked either. It could sometimes be because it was very beautiful, very pristine, something you want to be a part of. So, sound can translate into emotion, into movement. It can translate into repelling. It can translate into retraction. And, believe it or not, it can translate into solid items. So, let's look at some of the different cultures that use sound and what they use that sound for. In India, the sound of song and dance was said to have great power, and it would be the ways of the kings to be good at such creation. There's a bunch of different Sanskrit that you should read. American Indians also talk of tones and the magic words and the different chants and what they were used for and why they used the tonal qualities they did for those chants. Do you realize that some of the Native American chants are made in sounds that the Native Americans don't even know what they mean? Well, that's because that knowledge was lost over time. Sonic frequencies, as I said, can be used from communications to repelling to the realization that every point in a sound map is a point in space and time. And you notice I said space and time. Sonic cleaners, sonic cutters. There are food cutters. They use sonic waves to separate the molecules so that the meats and stuff could be cut without any touching of a blade or anything. I'll show you one of those in a little bit. Now we all remember the Marty McFly skateboard with the anti-mag lift. Those were supposedly electromagnetic at the time, but sonic waves would have worked just as well, if not better. This is an ancient chart that on the outset looks just like the pentagram, but it's actually a charting of the holy sonic tones. And if you want, you can press pause and check it out, or you can probably find it online if you Google sonic waves. There was a god that was said in ancient India to scream a tone that would make men fall to their knees, and this is a depiction of that god. This is one of the oldest known India sculptures. Goes back pretty much to the beginning of their civilization. And as Tesla said, the earth rings like a bell. Well, what he meant was the frequency of the earth is measurable. If that's true, then all sonic wavelengths, both heard and unheard, shall be easily found. This is a little bit of a diagram on sonic levitation and how it could work. They're showing a saucer here, but that's not one of the ones that I proclaim to follow. Now, using this method, one could do amazing things. They can cut into rock like it was butter. They could form rock into whatever shape they deemed appropriate just by changing the molecular structure based on its sonic frequency. It is amazing what could be done with the right frequencies. And yet, we're taking our jets and we're busting the sonic boom all the time. But what does that show us? It shows us a cone, mostly because of the movement of the plane through that sound barrier where it starts to leave the sound. World War I, World War II, all kinds of listening devices using the cone. The cone and the parabolic dish are both very significant because you find parabolic dishes even in ancient India. Our original listening posts were made of granite. Actually, no, it was made of cement, as you can see here, and used a parabolic shape to direct the sound to a center area. Acoustic levitation is formed by creating pressure at the top and the bottom of an item, creating a standstill in its position. As you can see in this demonstration here, there is a particle in between the two waves. Here you see a spider caught in that same wave. And remember, no spiders or bugs or anything else was ever hurt during these experiments. All creatures walked away with no problems. Let's look at something a little bigger levitated. Something like this beetle. Now that's a little bit more weight. The June bug is pretty heavy. But it's not, most of the heaviness is the outer exoshell. So do we have this genetic secret buried within us? I say we do. Deep inside our DNA is a secret formula in the form of frequencies that we can go back and look at different charts and find the relevant frequencies and their uses. So let's take a look at another example of a levitation scenario where you bombard the item with pressure from two sides. That way you can move things such as stone and water and people even. Some say that's the basis of the flying carpet. But yet we find things in ancient Egyptology that show us sound-based items, such as this item here, which seems to be an acoustic device, and this item right here, which many have said was a light bulb. I'm starting to believe that it was not. I'm starting to believe it was an acoustic device They have successfully levitated large boulders, such as this here. This is being levitated from a distance with 2 points of transmission, and it does in fact work. All you'd have to do is push it along. So, what is this magical power we call levitation? Well, it is a reaction to a pressure that is created by a frequency of sound waves. This is what is depicted in some of these ancient carvings in the stone, is the use of these different sound resonances to accomplish specific goals. So here we have another large monolithic structure that is just boggling to the mind. So let's talk about piezo electrogravitation. So, how does sound levitate a stone? Well, when a stone vibrates at its resonant frequency, a standing wave of compression and expansion sets up within the inside of it. What makes stones unique is that they are piezoelectric, meaning they convert pressure into electricity. Amazing, isn't it? Which means that something under a lot of stone is going to create electricity. So, therefore, if we apply sound to a stone, it converts that sound into electromagnetic or electrogravitational energy. Imagine that. You hit a large tuning fork with a hammer, apply the bottom of its handle to the side of a stone. The stone vibrates in sympathy, standing waves arise within the stone, and those standing waves turn into electromagnetic or gravitational waves. Now, how these gravitational waves are produced in this way is implied in a paper written by a guy named Montauk, and he's very, very good. He has come up with ways that sonic drilling can be employed using a certain formula, and all kinds of remarkable ideas. Now, in short, I guess, longitudinal acoustic waves in stones create longitudinal magnetic vector potentials within this stone. Now, thanks to the piezoelectric effect, these are identically gravitational potential waves. When gravitational potential waves are made to be standing waves, you have what they call a stable gravitational node or an antinode at the center of the stone. Essentially, a vibrating artificial center of gravity. Now, this alone may affect the stone's weight, not to mention may open portals if the gravitational node is sufficiently intense. Now, by additionally muting the opposing end of the stone, say through a non-vibrating rod pressed against it, the node shifts a bit off center, thereby unbalancing the stone's center of gravity. If shifted upwards, the stone will become lighter. The point of muting and point of applied vibration can be shifted to direct the stones in whatever direction you want. So, the same technology used to drill, cut, and shape stone can also be used to levitate them through an acoustic piezo-gravitational coupling process. Now, Edward Leedskalnin, that was the Lithuanian stonemason who built his little park in Florida. Well, he had the secret to this, and he had it deep inside his mind. Amazing, amazing stuff. So we have the mystics who can levitate through the sound of chant and through the power of their mind. And what is really happening is they've shifted their gravity to a point where it lifts them above the ground. just a matter of having more pressure upwards than downwards. So if you can imagine the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on you, plus the pull of these frequencies of gravity. Now, salt and sand and iron filings and whatever else can be used to show you the vibrational shapes of things, and some people just seem to come naturally by levitation. But the most incredible people who came up with the most incredible gravitational ideas were the ancients, and they showed their skill at forming, cutting, drilling, and lifting rock with frequencies. And this wasn't done in just one part of the world, but all over the world, in many different areas, in many different ways. So as you can see, they are capable of laser fine cuts and perfection. And so sound just doesn't blow your hair back anymore. There's a lot more to it. Sonic imaging can be used to map a floor of an ocean, and yet a few tones to the high end, and you can levitate small rocks. You can move large rocks with lower tendencies. The potential energy creates an invisible formation, a shape, and depending on that shape depends on what its function is. Whether it cuts, whether it lifts, whether it pushes, whether it pulls. It's absolutely amazing what sound is capable of. Not only can sound make you laugh and cry, but it can bring rain, and it can bring love and money and wealth and everything else. The amount of power within your mind is a boggling thing. And yet, we still know so very little about it, far less than our ancestors did. Far less than many gurus. But the ancients, they had it down. Even in prehistoric times, they knew the power of sound. And they wrote about that. They showed pictures of it happening. They showed so many different hints and clues and left us drawings and schematics. And it is my theory that the Mercury and Vimana ships used a form of resonance to maintain their flight. Perhaps, from the descriptions of some, it seems like they used the sound waves to lift and then like a prop to push and pull themselves through the air. Three-dimensional sound gives you a good idea of what it's actually capable of. Even though invisible, it contains pressure and might. The different dimensional states of reality, as you can see here, these are controlled as well by frequency and sound. There is no part of our lives that is untouched by the same powers that lifts the gurus and the mystics from the ground. And in so many cultures, not just Hinduism, but many, many others. I believe India to be the most technologically natural techno, to be as close as it gets. This is a piezoelectric urn that was used to create actually designs on the water that gave them the shapes for some of their structures. And these are found all over India, and they were made to show the frequency, vibrational shapes that we've been talking about. Certain cairns were used and were said to have items that were placed in them that floated above the bottom and just hovered within that cairn for years without having to be recharged by the chance. This is one of the sacred designs that they found, and it's also one of the designs commonly formed with sound. I mean, you can make what you want out of this stuff. This is a diagram of how the Tibetan monks raised stones to high levels using sound and chants. So one wonders, Could that be what moved this great block? Could that be what chiseled such beautiful corners on this bad boy? Could it lift people up off the ground? That is actually a person in a chamber, an acoustic chamber, being gravitated by sound. And the same here, only this is not controlled. This is internal frequency control. Very, very cool and very, very powerful. So here we have an ancient tuning fork with a hammer shown pointed at a rock. What could that be used for? We don't know, but we do know that this is the shape that comes out of that tuning fork when struck by a hammer. Very cool stuff. And here's another bass relief, only this one's not in India, it's in Egypt, showing a tuning fork and the possible uses of the focal points. More formulas. Some of you will take to these formulas quite rapidly and understand everything you're seeing. Others will just want to skip over it and move on. Okay, so here we have the Tibetan monks with their great horns. These horns, by the way, were said to be able to take down a city wall in the hands of the right person. Many sculptures were said to have been formed by sound waves. We measure sound in so many different ways. We measure it with vibrational, we do it by air movement, we do it by ground movement. I mean, all seismic activity is basically sound waves in the end. These sound intensifiers found all over India. It's amazing. Excuse me. So next we're going to move on from the Karns of India to this bad boy. Upon close examination, what you find here is the uses for several different frequencies. This has been verified. This is a sound wave food slicer. Think about that. It separates the molecules with sound, not by cutting. It's supposed to taste better too, I heard. More sound wave related etchings and carvings. It truly is amazing to me how much is out there. When I started doing this research, it was astounding. Every culture uses chants. Even the Catholic Church uses chants in some way. Now, what that actually does for them, I don't know. I don't know when the last time they actually did it right. All I know is levitation with sound is possible and feasible and has no weight limit if you hit the right frequencies. So, with all the different devices people are coming up with, we find that sound can be used for a plethora of ways. It's absolutely astounding to me. Some people tried to show me this particular item before with the Ankh and the Tesla coil and schematics. Here's some schematics for you electronics guys. You can copy this and you will be able to levitate something if you copy this correctly. And you'll need more than one, by the way. You'll need 2 or 3. And you will be able to create sound wave levitation. I can't wait to try this myself, actually. It looks to be quite interesting. This is an actual 3D interpretation of the sound waves of President Obama's voice, which may want you this here is a drawing showing how the triangulation is used on the Buddhist monks and how they raise stones focal point is everything, as well as deadening the top of the stone so that the stone has a center of gravity towards the top. This is illustrated here in this petroglyph. If you want to stop it and make it full screen and check it out, you'll see what I'm talking about. So now we get to our little buddy down in Florida with his secret cone devices for lifting stones. Now the cones, I believe, were the deadeners. They are the ones that change the center of gravity of the stone. And here's another depiction of that science, with showing how priests would have chanted and lifted the stone up the cliff to where they want it. Presumably they would have already pre-carved the thing and sent it on its way. Sonic waves. Wow, what a crazy thing. It's so simple that it's brilliant. And I don't think anybody can deny that there's a lot of power in vibrations. If you've ever been around fireworks, you know that you can feel it in your chest. So here's our little buddy in Florida with a great big tuning fork. This is the guy that also used the cones, supposedly. He's giving you a huge clue here as to what he was doing. And I just was telling you about the tuning forks in Egypt. Well, we saw the hieroglyphs that showed that. Well, our little buddy here seems to have figured that out. And he did claim to have unlocked the pyramid's secrets. And here is the carvings of the tuning fork, the stone, the hammer. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And so, I leave it to you folks. Are you going to try this? Will you? Will you actually try to levitate something with sound? Because I'm going to.